Good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Burman. This is The Hill on News Nation. Tonight, forced to fire in New York City. A Customs and Border Patrol agent now in the hospital. DHS says shot by an illegal immigrant.
Absolutely zero reason that someone who is scum of the earth like this should be running loose on the streets of New York City.
A top official from the agency joins us in moments on how and if the Trump administration might respond in the Big Apple. Also tonight, 6 months in, what President Trump is saying about that milestone, where his administration heads from here. Plus, 1 year ago today, Joe Biden said he was out of the race. And look who showed up today to take some parting shots.
He was charged with grand larceny and also assault. The state of Massachusetts has an active warrant out for him for armed robbery with a firearm. He also has many other charges against him.
That not, of course, Hunter Biden. His comments, though, of his father's use of Ambien and what he had to say about George Clooney. Also tonight, can you beat the odds? A major move that is likely to lead to an explosion in political betting. Scott Trainer joins me tonight to explain why billions of dollars, maybe even your money, are soon to be at stake. But first tonight, here from The Hill, the latest developments on that shooting of a Border Patrol officer in New York. Our Allie Bradley in a moment on how agents are reacting. But first to Henna Doba, live in the Big Apple tonight, where the DHS secretary spoke out today. Henna?
Hi, Blake. Yeah, 2 men have been arrested, like you mentioned. It appears to be an attempted robbery gone wrong, a crime of opportunity. Saturday night, Miguel Francisco Mora Nunez, who has a lengthy criminal record, along with his accomplice Christian Abar Barrow, in Manhattan. Just for some context, it's by the George Washington Bridge. They came on a moped, as you can see on the video. That's where they approached the off-duty Border Patrol officer and then shot him. The officer then grabbed his gun, shot Nunez back. Nunez was then taken to the hospital. He went to the hospital by himself. He was later arrested there Saturday morning. But I do want to show you some video. This is new. It just came into the newsroom a little while ago. It was posted on DHS. Look closely. It shows Abar Baroa driving the same moped that was used in the crime, dumping the shooter's body at the door of the ER and quickly mention Abar custody. That is according to DHS. He also has a criminal record.
Our Henna Doba live tonight in New York. That the latest video out from DHS this evening. Down now to the southern border as our Allie Bradley is talking to agents there about what they are saying and how they are reacting to all of this. Allie live tonight in Del Rio, Texas. Allie?
Yeah, hey, Blake, they're certainly not happy about it here. Agents and officers basically pointing back at the Biden administration, saying that both of those individuals, they came in under the Biden administration, they were apprehended and subsequently released. And then the sanctuary policies came to play here, too. But here's some reaction that we're getting from those agents and officers tonight saying, quote, I hope Homan sends us to New York City. We want revenge. Another saying, quote, just shows that Tom Homan is correct when he says that sanctuary cities harbor criminals. Thousands living in these cities, and they are a danger to this country. Another saying, quote, surprised it hasn't happened more with the amount of criminals Biden let in. And finally, one saying, quote, take the mindset of this guy. He came here illegally with no repercussions and then committed crimes without consequences. The lack of laws and the policies in New York City did this. Now, these agents and officers, they want to be deployed to New York City. They want to do these kind of massive operations in New York, like what you're seeing in Los Angeles, too. They want to bolster any kind of support that they can. They said they are at the ready if they get the call. Blake?
Our Allie Bradley live tonight along the southern border following this story. Allie, thank you. Joining me now here on The Hill, Tricia McLaughlin, Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs over at the Department of Homeland Security. Tricia, thanks for being in tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you. The condition of this CBP agent, what can you tell us about it tonight?
It is serious condition. Secretary Noem just went there to see him in the hospital in New York. He's in stable condition. It looks like he'll be undergoing surgery, but our prayers are with him and his family. What a horrendous ordeal.
Tom Homan, the border czar, said today that more agents could be headed to New York City.
Yeah.
Is that likely? What does that look like?
I mean, if these sanctuary city politicians won't let us in their jails, that is the safest way to make an arrest. If these individuals would have been in the jails, these two with rap sheets a mile long, whether it be assault, armed robbery, or even kidnapping warrant out in Massachusetts, if those sanctuary city politicians would have let us in the jails, we wouldn't need to be flooding the zone with our Border Patrol agents. But we could just arrest them in those jails, and it would be a lot safer for all New Yorkers.
But that's not happening, so I wonder what the footprint looks like going forward.
Then we will be out on the streets making those arrests of the worst, like these individuals.
Here was Eric Adams, the mayor there in New York City today. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
We have to be clear. There's a balance between humane treatment and very clear actions, and we've shown that. I have not let any areas to be gray on where I stand on those who are here doing the right thing and pursuing the American dream, and those who are here who are turning that dream into a nightmare.
What would you say to the mayor there?
I don't know what's humane about letting MS-13 gang members, rapists, murderers out onto the streets of New York City for them to just further terrorize American citizens. I think what they're doing is creating a massive crisis, a massive public safety crisis for the people of New York. We saw these two individuals, but this is just one of countless cases where criminal illegal aliens are let out of jails. The police officers are not allowed to work with our ICE enforcement officers, and then they go on to commit more crimes like we just saw.
So I don't want to put words into Eric Adams' mouth or try to maybe explain what he had to say, but Todd Lyons, who's the acting head of ICE, over the weekend said this as it relates to the policy, and I'll pick it up from there.
Sure.
If we go ahead and go out into the community and we do effectuate an arrest of one of those individuals, but there might be 2 or 3 other individuals with that person that's here illegally, we're just not going to walk away like we did in the past. We are going to, conduct our law enforcement mission and arrest those individuals.
So is that what he's talking about there with the quote-unquote treatment of DHS, of ICE, of Customs and Border Protection is trying to target violent criminals, but then other folks are around them, and those are the folks that get illegal immigrants who get swept up?
Yes, that's correct. So that would be called a collateral arrest. They might not have been the target, but if you're hanging out with gang members, if you're hanging out with criminals, we will be targeting those individuals, and so you will be picked up. But our message remains that 70% of those who have been arrested in this country who are here illegally have either prior convictions or criminal pending charges. So we are going after the worst of the worst, Blake, but further than that, there doesn't need to be a single arrest because those who are here illegally can get their $1,000, a free ticket, and leave now and potentially preserve the opportunity to come back the right legal way.
The quote-unquote collateral arrest, isn't that where some might feel that this has gone too far? And we've seen it in the polling with the numbers with the president on immigration.
Absolutely not. If you are affiliating with MS-13 gang members, Tren de Aragua, criminals in any sense, you will likely also be targeted and swept up in those operations.
Hunter Biden, back in the news today. He was opining about this issue. Here he was.
All these Democrats say, you have to talk about and realize that people are really upset about illegal immigration. You. How do you think your hotel room gets cleaned? How do you think you have food on your table? Who do you think washes your dishes?
What would you say to Hunter Biden?
I talked to Laken Riley's family. I talked to Jocelyn Nungre's family. The thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Angel families, those families who have been impacted by the 100,000 Americans who are killed by fentanyl that's funneled across the porous southern border under the Biden administration. There is blood on their hands, and that's exactly what I would say to them.
Allie Bradley, you heard her report there, and I'll leave you with this. She talked about one agent who wants revenge as it relates to this shooting in New York City. Again, a Customs and Border Patrol officer was off duty. It was a robbery attempt, shot, and now at the hospital.
Yeah.
You could understand the sense of frustration, of anger, and probably much more beyond that. But what would you say to those who told Allie they want revenge?
Our revenge will be making the American people safer. That is our job. Department of Homeland Security is a law enforcement agency. We will continue to carry out the law and make sure that Americans are safer, whether it be New York, LA, Chicago, or any other sanctuary city. If those leaders won't lead, we will.
Lastly, National Guard troops on the ground in New York City, is that a possibility?
I won't get ahead of the secretary on this one, Blake.
Okay, all right, we'll leave it there. Trisha McLaughlin with DHS, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. All right, still to come tonight. Here on the Hill, the Democrat who Joe Rogan said should run for president. You heard that right, and it's likely someone that you have never heard of. Plus, if you think sports betting is big, is politics the next play? Other side of the break, Scott Tranter on a $112 million move that could eventually let you put your money where your mouth is. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Burman. The Hill, back in 4 minutes. See you on the other side of the break. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on News Nation. So, is it time to put your money where your mouth is? At least in politics. The federal government has actually now made that easier after the Department of Justice announced it ended a probe against Polymarket, the largest prediction market in the world, revealed today that it has bought an exchange and is poised to re-enter the U.S. market. Now, here's the big deal with this one. It likely clears the way for more political gambling here in the United States, which escalated to billions of dollars in the last cycle.
The betting market stuff?
Yeah, they're a website and an app where people can bet money on regular happenings like in society.
That was J.D. Vance last go around talking about the betting market stuff. It's only gotten bigger. For example, here's a couple, here's a lot. You can continue to scroll through Polymarket, right? Who's going to leave the Trump administration by the end of the year? Which country will the president visit in 2025? All news making headlines that you can now gamble on, or at least, I guess, Scott Tranter, data science director, the man behind the numbers, as I like to call him. It's not that you couldn't do it before, but now that company is basically allowed back here in the U.S., essentially.
Yeah, and as you point out, they're the largest one. They're not the only one, but they are the largest one.
Yeah.
And if you're into these things, you want liquidity. You want other people taking the other side of your bet. And so this is just going to balloon the market.
So last go around, let's show, for example, the presidential election winner in 2028. Last go around, there were about $3 billion, like $3.5 billion or so bet leading into the presidential election. You think that could be like another $10 billion on top of that next go around?
My personal opinion, and watch, we should open a prediction market and see if I'm right. 10 to $15 billion.
10 to 15 billion. Okay.
Yeah.
And so for context here, Scott, every week in the NFL, I think it's something like $1.5 billion or $2 billion are bet on NFL games, the most popular thing in this country.
Yes. Yeah. I think it'll be bigger because, again, this is sports, but this is sports for nerds. So if you want to bet...
I call politics sports for current events, essentially.
Exactly. And look, the betting with the prediction markets, your people are emotional about it. So they are trying to put their money where their mouth is.
Okay.
And that's kind of why you see the involvement.
This one you picked out on purpose because you actually think this tells us something.
Yeah, look, first of all, the market here, 28, 14, 11, 9, we are multiple years out.
Yeah.
So this is where people get into it.
Yeah.
But again, it's the roller coaster. Again, not financial advice, but if you want my personal opinion, Gavin Newsom at 14%, probably a little low.
Okay. And then here's the thing with all this. It's like I'm a Big Ten guy. Who's your football?
I'm a Northwestern guy.
Okay, so we're both Big Ten guys.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with the MAC.
Nothing wrong with the MAC.
We love a little, Toledo, Northern Illinois football. My point is you can kind of, the future here is on whatever you want because here's a race in Texas. John Cornyn, Ken Paxton, and there's money going behind this.
And this is what I like, right? So the difference between this and normal sports betting is you're waiting for the outcome of the game. The outcome of this game is 6 months from now. And so if you think, whether or not you think Paxton or Cornyn's going to win, you could buy Cornyn at 43 cents right now. And if he goes up a little bit, then you can get out of your bet and capture the win. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of these people play the momentum that is politics.
All right. And again, the point here is you think billions are flowing into this. Here's another one. This is being talked about nonstop, right? Jay Powell. Is the president going to fire him?
Yeah.
Which legally, a lot of folks think he can't. But all that, Jay Powell's tenure. And you told me something fascinating. You think, and when you think about all the downstream effects, that like the hedge funds are going to be using this stuff to hedge. Explain.
Yeah, no, I think financial institutions are looking for places where they can get some alpha, understand what's really going to happen, and that's what prediction markets are. And then 2, have some direct exposure to an event happening. We're using Jerome Powell here, but we could also do politics, right? Who is the next president is a financial markets mover, and so they can have some exposure there. Now, they got to get bigger. There is no hedge fund out there that wants to bet on something with it's a few $100,000 or place any investments. But that's why we got to see the $10 to $15 billion before we move it. But that's a momentum thing.
who will leave their role in the administration this year. Again, just shows you sort of the scope of this stuff.
Yeah, and look, these kind of markets are where prediction markets shine, right? Right now, this is everyone's best guess, right? But as these markets move, and they can move 24 hours a day, we can get some insight into whether or not something's going to happen. Dan Bongino, a month ago, was not at 41%.
No.
Yeah.
And
that moved over the weekend.
Pete Hegseth 2 months ago was not at 19%.
Was not at 19, yeah.
3 months ago. If you think that this is a 10 to 15 billion dollars or so in 2028, we're talking about tens and tens and tens of billions again in political betting, like rivaling the NFL.
Oh yeah, easily.
NBA.
Yeah, look,
Major League Baseball.
The rough estimate is about $4 billion was spent or bet or put in the prediction markets on all U.S. elections in 2024. So yeah, we're talking Senate races, House races, ballot initiatives, governors, all those types of things.
You name it. Scott will be here for it. Scott Trainer, Data Science Director over at DDHQ. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. All right. Still to come tonight here on the Hill. Why is Hunter Biden back in the news today? It's been 1 year since his father said, you know what, I'm out of the race. And then all of a sudden comes this.
We hit a lot of home runs, and we're going to keep hitting them.
Donald Trump as well hails his second term as a success. The six biggest stories in his first 6 months as he celebrates a milestone. The Hill on News Nation returns. .26 here on the East Coast and in our nation's capital tonight. Today marks 1 year since then President Joe Biden announced his exit from the 2024 presidential race. Then Vice President Kamala Harris would go on to replace Biden as the Democratic nominee. You know this. We all remember this. And so what happened today on this anniversary? The former president's son, Hunter Biden, doing a lengthy interview that was released today with the YouTube personality Andrew Callion, and making it very clear that he is no fan of George Clooney, one of his father's top donors.
And George Clooney is now, to rationalize why he attempted to cut the knees out from a sitting president, the most successful president in the history of his party in his life in terms of the legislative policies that he wanted to see passed, had to justify somehow him going above and beyond to write an op-ed in the New York Times to try to force the sitting president of the United States out of the race. Him, and everybody around him.
I'm telling you, I could play a soundbite in which there was a lot more than that as well. Clooney's New York Times op-ed sparked the establishment publicly running from Biden after the president's disastrous debate performance, leaving many wondering at the time if that article was actually blessed by Barack Obama. Now, Hunter Biden claims the president's use of Ambien did him in that night of the debate.
I know exactly what happened in that debate. He flew around the world, basically, the mileage that he could have flown around the world 3 times. Yeah. He's 81 years old. He's tired as You give him Ambien to be able to sleep. He gets up on the stage, and he looks like he's a deer in the headlights.
Joining me now, Aaron McGuire, Republican strategist, and Chris Cillizza, News Nation contributor. Hello to you both. Hey. In my house, we describe that as a potty mouth, but we'll leave that to the side. Man, I wanted to talk about where the Democratic Party was going to go from here 1 year out, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but Hunter Biden said, no, hold my beer. Not really, but you know where I was going with that. Hunter Biden coming out today.
Yes, the gift that keeps on giving to Republicans. Hunter, come on out for more. We're really enjoying everything you have to say. He really shows, one, there's no introspection in the Biden family or in the Democrat Party, apparently, about why Biden should not have been running for president. 2, picking a fight with George Clooney at this point. What are you trying to achieve here other than showing everybody that you're incredibly bitter and angry that your father, who clearly is in cognitive decline, should not have been running for president of the United States? And 3, if he is blaming Ambien for the president's performance at that debate, is he also going to blame Ambien for all of the other failures and mess-ups of the Biden administration? Is that just going to be the get-out-of-jail-free card now?
It is a question if you were on Ambien then as the commander-in-chief and the leader of the free world and the president of the United States, like, when else were you using it?
Yeah, well, okay, a couple things.
Yeah.
One.
I think you might have more than a
One,
couple. But
if somebody comes to you, any of us, and says, hey, how about a 3-hour sit down? Which is roughly the length of that YouTube clip, because I watch all 3 hours, but I fast forward. Say no. No one can talk for 3 hours and be like really great, especially if we're kind of a politician. So that's number one. Number two, he needs to shut it. Like, no one is in Hunter Biden has not ever been elected anything. Hunter Biden's business acumen, as such as it is because his last name was Biden. Right? I mean, I would say the same thing with Don Jr. and Eric, but that's just true. Three, remember when he was like an artist and people were buying his stuff for like $300,000? Well, that's because his last name is Biden too. There's nothing, no one is like, I wonder what Hunter Biden thinks on. No one thinks
so
that.
Here's what he said about immigration today, or in the clip.
All these Democrats say, you have to talk about and realize that people are really upset about illegal immigration. You. How do you think your hotel room gets cleaned? How do you think you have food on your table? Who do you think washes your dishes?
I mean, if I said to Aaron, figure out something that someone related to Joe Biden or Joe Biden himself could do to really play into Republicans' hands, there's no chance she would be like this, because she'd be like, not in my wildest dreams would that happen.
Do you think Joe Biden knew this was coming out? Wanted it to come out?
I have kids, 2 boys. I understand father-son. But he has always enabled Hunter Biden. Always. So even if he did know, which I suspect he might, I guarantee you he was like, well, okay.
Whether he knew or whether he didn't know, the reality is Hunter was going to do that anyways. Hunter's sitting there screaming about immigration. Who puts the food on the plate? Who puts the food on your plate, Hunter? It's your dad. You've never held any real job. You have no real experience whatsoever, but you're going to yell at the American people? When he sat there and he was so indignant about where everything came from. Everything you have in life, Hunter, comes from your father. And you sitting there talking about George Clooney. Listen, I'm not one to defend George Clooney, but he's like, how dare you? No, Hunter, how dare you? You're like, this is just another guy giving his opinion the same way you are.
So here's the way I thought we were going to start the day out. Not that dropped mid-afternoon or so, was about the way forward, right? Because it was 1 year ago today where it surprised some, didn't surprise many, right? The president's decision. And fast forward a year later, we're talking about Zohran Mamdani and James Tallarico. And if you don't know who Tallarico is, he's a state assemblyman, state lawmaker in Texas, 36, 37 years old, somewhere in there, and was on Joe Rogan's podcast just the other day. Here he was, and I'll pick it up from there.
There is reason and good reasons to be disillusioned. I guess all I'm pushing back on is that second step of it's always going to be this way.
Right. It doesn't have to be this way.
That is the key step.
Right.
So
that's because you need to run for president. We need someone who's actually a good person.
Well,
because the Democrats have very few candidates that are.
Can I actually push back on that?
Please.
Because we were talking about how politics has become a religion. This is one of the ways it does is people put all their faith in a politician.
No, but I'm not saying that.
I've seen it with Bernie.
Yes.
People, and I like Bernie a whole lot, but some people treat him as if he's a messianic figure.
And I think it all goes hand in hand, Aaron, because it's the conversation of where the party goes from here, and is it more like that?
I don't think so, because Tallarico, I would say, is almost the opposite of Mamdani, at least in the way he presents himself. He doesn't come off as radical or extreme. Mamdani openly refuses to denounce the infantada. Like, that is not the reality of the Democrat Party. They have one person in Texas right now that looks like a better candidate than the rest, and they all get hyper-fixated on should he be the next guy. Look at Beto. Look at Colin Allred. Texas always has this fever dream of a Democrat politician who's going to rise up and change the state. And they have all failed brilliantly, may I add. Beto on the cover of a magazine, I was born to do this. It could be heading that same direction.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that two things are true. One, Donald Trump is not particularly popular, right at the 6-month mark, 42, 43%.
Going to get into that in a second.
Democrats are less popular. I mean, a recent poll from a national news organization, 28% favorable, lowest they had measured since 1992 when they started doing national polling. So, like, I think this is part of the problem, is they just there's a void right now, which is somewhat understandable because they don't have power at any level. They don't have a majority of the governorships. They obviously control nothing in Washington. But the problem is, no one's really filled that vacuum. I think that's why people like Tallarico get some attention, because they're like, this sound, or Andy Bashir, for example, in Kentucky. This sounds like a real normal human.
So here was, and I'll end it with this. Here was James Carville in the New York Times. You guys see the op-ed today? He basically talked about the way forward. He said, constipated, leaderless, confused, cracked out clown car, his words. He says, Democrats are not wrong to call the party that. But he said, the only thing that can save us is basically a savior like Clinton or Obama, but that new leader will not emerge until after the midterm elections.
I think that's right. I mean, look, people respond to a person. I mean, the stuff that Trump kind of was able to glom into one movement had been kicking around for a while, right? I mean, Tea Party, right? People weren't happy with McConnell. The base of the Republican Party wasn't happy long before Donald Trump emerged. He was just the figure that was able to unify that. Obama's the same way, right? In 2008. So look, we are drawn to personalities, not necessarily policies, particularly at the presidential level. So I think Carville is right about that.
Okay, because Tallarico has basically said we shouldn't hang on to one person.
I mean, whether we should or not, that's what people do.
Carville right here, TBD until November 2026.
That's a fine assessment to make or guess, but Democrats still don't. The Democrats still believe, and James Carville is one of those people, that you need to have this one ultimate savior. They needed to have their own Joe Rogan. They need to have their own that it's always just this one figure, instead of realizing that their inability to effectuate a conversation with the American people about their policy positions. Jasmine Crockett always says, "Don't talk about policy." This is why Democrats, it's not about who their leader is, it's because they don't have anything, the policy platform. So yeah, kick it down the road a little bit. You'll have plenty of time to figure it out.
All right, leave it there. We'll move to the other side of the aisle. You two, stick around if you can. Thank you. President Trump hits a milestone over the weekend, 6 months back in the Oval.
We achieved more in 6 months than almost any administration could accomplish in 8 years.
So what are the 6 biggest moments so far in the president's second term, and where does he go from here? President talking a lot about this 6 months over the last 48 hours or so. We dive into it next.
Thank you for making News Nation America's fastest growing cable network in all of television. Let's get after it. The place where left and right come to be reasonable. News Nation, news for all Americans.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on News Nation. Whether you are the biggest Trump critic or MAGA loyalist or somewhere in between and just take it issue by issue, one would have to acknowledge it has been a consequential 6 months to start President Trump's second term. Undoubtedly, there's been success at the border when it comes to illegal crossings and controlling fentanyl entering the country.
We achieved the most secure border in U.S. history, and last month we had the lowest number of illegal border crossings ever recorded.
But with those numbers and that success has also come a firestorm of criticism over ICE raids and who is being detained and why, resulting in massive protests across the country in spots. Now, with the consequences, for better or worse, the Liberation Day tariffs, still TBD. Then there was the tabloid-like marriage, tabloid-like divorce between President Trump and Elon Musk. You can categorize the passing of the One Big Beautiful Bill under promises made, promises kept, again, whether you're for it or not. And overseas, President Trump would flex military muscle during a June 22nd strike on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
On the other side, though, many would say promise not kept when it came to the ending the Ukraine war on day one. And finally, in just the latest battle in the war between President Trump and the Ivy League, Harvard was in court today arguing that the government had no right to strip the private university of a couple $2 billion in research funding. When it comes to the president's approval rating, by the way, over the last 6 months, add it all up from Inauguration Day until now, he was sitting at 56% before putting his hand on the Bible. Yesterday, at 44%. But he still has strong approval from his base at 86% among Republicans. Full panel here with me now. Bill McGinley, former cabinet secretary in the first Trump White House. Scott Bolden, News Nation political contributor. Aaron McGuire is a Republican strategist. And Chris Cillizza, News Nation contributor. Hello to you all. Thanks for being in. Happy Monday. I'm going to start with you, Bill. What's up with that approval rating? Underwater here 6 months in.
Look, I think we've had one of the most consequential first 6 months of any presidency in a long time. I mean, in terms of the legislation that's been passed, in terms of closing the border that during the Biden administration was an unmitigated disaster that led to a spike in crime, fentanyl deaths, and frankly, just turning over our southern border to transnational criminal organizations, the cartels. President Trump came in and immediately started delivering on the promises he made on the campaign trail. It's been a home run derby for MAGA in terms of his accomplishments this first 6 months.
I'm going to get to you in a second. Let's move to immigration because you brought up immigration. Look, the border is a success, basically closed up. If I were to have told you, Bill, 6 months ago that those were the numbers on immigration, you would say that's wrong, that's a typo, print up a new graphic, but it's not, and it has to do because of the raids.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're looking at what ICE is doing, ICE is executing court orders to take people who have been convicted of crimes or alleged crimes here in the United States, or they have criminal records from their home countries. And what they're doing is they're rounding them up and getting them out. That is going to be the first wave. Now, some of the people are going to say, oh, there's the stories from Los Angeles about they were raiding a Home Depot and stuff like that. Tom Homan and others who are actually running these programs have debunked those falsehoods. And what the Trump administration is doing is getting the more dangerous ones out of here.
I can only hold Scott back for so long.
But to my colleague, that's inaccurate, if you will, because those criminals who have committed crimes before or during, they're not out there working the fields like in the raids in L.A. That's the first thing. The second of all, what your polling shows more than anything is that America wants its borders to be safe. It wants to stop the fentanyl, but it does not support how Trump and DHS has gone about doing it, if you will. And that's why those numbers are the way they are. They want the criminals to be gone, but they don't want the raids. They don't want they want these individuals to have due process rights. And this administration doesn't believe, if you're here illegally, that you have due process rights. They've said that publicly.
Scott, with all due respect, the people that they are rounding up are people who have had due process and adjudication in this court system. They have court orders for removals. So this double due process nonsense that Democrats seem to want, where you get additional due process if you're illegal immigrant, banana nuts.
Here's the thing. You can argue, and it has been and it will be. So what does he need to do, Aaron, to turn that number around?
Right now, it's going to be all narrative, right? It's going to be continuing to drive the message. You remember in early days of polling, generally on any piece of hard, contentious legislation or action taken by a president, the numbers are usually a higher disapproval than approval. Obamacare. You go down the road, you give that time, you give it explanation, you give it a media narrative, you can move those numbers. That's what they're going to be.
Well, they're going to have to do a lot to move those numbers.
I think Aaron's right about that. The only thing I would say is Obamacare, which was unpopular when it was passed, it took a while for it. Now, it is 60% of people now approve of it, but that was 15 years. If you're Donald Trump, that's not the worst thing in the world because, you know, you're looking at your legacy. The problem is if you're like a House member in a swing district, you may not have enough time, even if they do get the messaging right. You know, look, in 2010, a lot of Democrats lost House and Senate seats because of Obamacare. Obama will point to it and say, well, it's popular now. Well, great for him, but hard for them.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I said this earlier today on a radio interview I do every Monday. I said, normally when you pass major legislation, you get out on the road and you pound it and you say, this is what we did and why it's good for you, yada, yada, yada. They haven't done that with the bill, Aaron and Chris. And when you look at the president's approval rating on the economy, the other big issue, quote unquote, it's the economy. Stupid, he's underwater there.
Yeah, he's got to sell it. I mean, he has got to sell it. And I really do think that, and this is the reality of, this happens in every second term, the needs of the president's party, I don't mean Trump or, Obama, whatever, are very different than the needs of, or what the president is focused on. He is focused on making the One Big Beautiful Bill his legacy, right? Making immigration his legacy. Again, if you're Susan Collins in Maine, you are focused on trying to get reelected.
Susan Collins, you're not worried about that anyway. Susan runs her own race 100% of the time.
Yeah, but here's the problem. There's a dichotomy. Trump is serving his MAGA base. They love what he's doing. 85% of the Republican Party supports him.
And 85% of the other side hate it.
Exactly. But when you poll all Americans, independents, Republicans, and Democrats, right, that's where you're getting the 60%, 55% disapproval. Because while they may want a safer border, as I said earlier, they certainly don't like how he's implementing it. With the economy, they don't like the tariffs and the uncertainty that it brings with it. And that's what those polling numbers indicate.
Fear-mongering from the media narrative that
no, I'm
tariffs
looking at the numbers. I'm just looking at the numbers, and you don't have a good response for that.
I do have a good response. You both believe, two lawyers over here, you almost became White House counsel in the second administration bill. You both believe that this Harvard case that is before the courts right now is a big one for the president. Why do you believe that?
Because it's part of the civil rights agenda. It's part of the education reform agenda. We're basically taking storied institutions that last year and over the last 4 years have completely lost their way. In 2024, we had Jewish students who were being told by university police that you need to hide in the attic because we don't think we can keep you safe on campus. That was in the United States in 2024. When you look at what's going on at Harvard and how that institution has lost its way, and what the Trump administration is trying to do is to make it an education institution again, to teach people how to think, not what to think, but allow the freedom of express so that there's a robust debate on campus, but you're not going to have the administration and the faculty putting their fingers on the scales to try and influence one.
Well, no one would argue. I hope you're not arguing that Harvard isn't an educational institution. The real issue in this case is whether Harvard has a First Amendment right, to run its institution the way it wants. It's made some mistakes. It's fixed some of those mistakes. Long way to go, even if you believe that. But the reality is, can they pull $2 billion in grants simply because of the fine language in these grants where they say that you've got to comply with the civil rights laws, you've got to comply with this? Can they conflate those issues and make a policy? And make it certainly is. But how do you conflate how they handle anti-Semitism or even racism on campus versus are they performing under the grants? And that's what the judge has to decide.
Around the table, next 6 months will mark the first year. You think Trump needs to do what?
I think he's had an amazingly consequential first 6 months. I think the jury is very much out on whether consequential is good or bad for his party.
Aaron.
Right now, it's going to be gearing up for midterms. The president is sitting on an incredibly large war chest right now. His ability to play and define these midterms are going to be big. So how he does that, what races and where, that's what I'm watching for the next 6 months.
I think Trump, for him to be consequential on the good side, he's got to talk to America and pass legislation and lead America, not just MAGA. And if he continues to serve his MAGA agenda, then the Democrats, when they get a messenger and a message going into 2026,
a pipe dream.
Two things.
Two is right. Yeah. Then you're gonna see the House come back to the Dems.
Yeah, big beautiful bill. The tariffs trying to repatriate the jobs, getting the economy going. If in December or even this November, the economy is roaring, Republicans are going to be in great shape heading into 2026.
Right. We'll see where it goes. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Appreciate it. Still to come tonight here on The Hill. All that talk about the president in 6 months, right? He's been posting away about this. I'm going to show you on the other side of the break why Trump 6 months in is doing something that no other president has ever done and why they've never really been able to do it before. And coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, she will be talking to the border czar Tom Homan about the off-duty Border Patrol officer in New York City. 7 o'clock Eastern, right here on News Nation. My take, other side of the break. All right, if you're just getting home, ooh, look, new graphic. Here's what's trending on The Hill. I'm trying to catch you up on some of the day's top news. How about this? Judge weighs reality of Trump ideological deportation policy as activists crackdown trial ends. As The Hill reports, the judge in this case, who, by the way, was an appointee of Ronald Reagan, must determine whether the so-called ideological deportation policy that exists is valid or not. This has to do with activists on college campuses. This story popped up out of nowhere today. Hunter Biden goes off on George Clooney. There was a lot of you-know-what. You see the word there on the screen. Hunter Biden with a 3-hour, give or take, interview that dropped on YouTube. He also said, by the way, his dad was using Ambien as president before the debate. And the president. Big story here in these parts. As it relates to the Washington Commanders and the Cleveland Guardians, the president wants them to change their names back, and he is dangling possibly the stadium here in this town as part of the negotiations. To check out these stories and more, all you have to do, just scan the QR code on your screen or visit thehill.com. All right, time for my take tonight. You've been hearing a lot about President Trump's 6 months in office. Coming both into and out of it, the president has been spending a bunch of time doing something that not many folks would have predicted. He's talking about AI. On Wednesday, he'll deliver the keynote address at what's being called the Winning the AI Race Forum here in Washington. Last week, he highlighted $90 billion worth of AI investments while in Pennsylvania. And if you don't understand why, well, here's one way to sum up what is a very complicated and for many a very exciting future. The most valuable company in this country right now is NVIDIA. It makes the chips to help power the artificial intelligence revolution moving forward. Now worth $4.2 trillion, blowing past legacy players to the top spot. Now, remember, President Trump also led into his 6-month mark by focusing on crypto. Congress signing 3 bills into law just last week. And if you're wondering why they're focused on that, well, Bitcoin's market cap now north of $2 trillion, valued alongside companies like Apple, Amazon, Google. And by the way, when it comes to number 2 in the space, Ethereum, that cryptocurrency is now basically the same size as ExxonMobil and Costco, 2 entities that have been around for a combined 200 years or so. So here's the point. This is a first. A president spending their 6-month moment to tout AI and crypto. And while we don't know what the future might hold, my guess is this president won't be the last one to do it either. I thank you so much for watching us tonight here on The Hill. Just something to think about as we go. I'm Blake Burman. Have a great one.